Welcome to the channel, everyone. On this channel, we share stories of average Joes around the world and their not so average issues. Let's start with the first story. I'm a 33-year-old female and I recently got into a big fight with my mother-in-law and I don't know what to do. For the sake of privacy, I'll be referring to my husband as H, his mom as MIL, and my best friend as PF. I should start off by saying that my husband and I have quite a noticeable age gap. He's a 41-year-old male and I'm his second wife, although this is my first marriage. H and I only got married about a year and a half ago, so I'm still new to the married life. Personally, I don't mind the age gap and neither do my friends nor my husband, and I am not in contact with my family, so their opinion doesn't matter. But it's always been a point of disapproval for my mother-in-law. I mean, she's never made a big deal out of it, so it was never a big issue. But occasionally, I'll be on the receiving end of a side-eye or sarcastic comment about my appearance and my age. She says things like, "Oh well, you haven't been married before. It's not your fault," whenever I mess anything up, and it sounds very backhanded to me. I feel like she's always harping on the fact that H has been married before, and she makes remarks about how the ex-wife was closer with the family than I am. I don't know if it's done on purpose, but these comments hurt. Still, it's nothing I can't handle. I do wish H would confront her about it sometimes though, especially when she compares me to the ex-wife. I'm trying my best to fit in. The generational gap doesn't help either. Since H is already almost a decade older than me, I'm way younger than his parents and relatives. So, if mother-in-law happens to see me exposing too much skin, she'll make sure to point it out and express her distaste for the way I dress. If she catches me jamming to a billboard puppet, she'll tut at my music taste, etc. You get the vibe. It's like living with your mom. Anyway, this all started because I decided I wanted to get closer to my husband's side of the family. We have a 10-month-old baby boy together, and I don't want me to be the reason my son doesn't have good relations with the family. So, I took up the responsibility to host the yearly family Christmas party this time. Usually, the gathering happens at my in-laws. But due to mother-in-law having had a surgery recently, she has expressed that she does not feel up for it this time. Naturally, I offered to lend a hand as no one wants to miss the traditional get-together. It would be a great chance to really bond with the rest of the family and make a good impression. Maybe that was my first mistake. I should have let one of my sister-in-laws handle it. The second mistake was inviting my best friend. My best friend, who's around my age too, wasn't able to make it home for Christmas as her family caught COVID. No one deserves being alone on Christmas Eve, especially not my bestie. So obviously I told her to come. Little did I know that this would lead to a disaster. Okay, so best friend doesn't have much of a filter to begin with. Get her drunk enough and she'll tell you secrets about yourself you didn't even know you had. Mother-in-law is a gossip monger who definitely doesn't stick to the walls at any parties. She's a big talker who likes to go around the room and socialize with everyone and make sure they're having fun. Enter mother-in-law and she's already nitpicky and grumpy because the decorations were excessive and she doesn't like the Christmas playlist that's playing. I try to remind her that this is my first time doing something like this. Cut me some slack. H, as usual, doesn't care much for his mother's criticism about me, which I appreciate, but it would be nice if he stepped in once in a while. The third and final mistake occurs a little later into the evening. Dinner is over and I'm setting the kitchen straight with sister-in-law's help when mother-in-law comes rushing into the kitchen, angrily cursing at me. I'm taken aback and don't really know what to do. So I take her aside and ask her what the problem is. She yells that she had run into this tipsy best friend of mine who had mentioned something to mother-in-law about how husband and I met. And oh boy, I have to admit that husband and I didn't start off on the cleanest slates. To be completely honest, we met a few months after husband's divorce at a club where I was a stripper. I had just gotten myself kicked out of home and with a ton of student loans and other bills to pay. I did what I had to do. After a few months of interacting and then eventually dating, husband offered me help with money, which his family already knows about. Mother-in-law is of the opinion that I mooched off of him and I took advantage of his money by using my youth. As you can see, husband's family can be judgmental. That's why husband wanted to keep the circumstances of our meeting under wraps. There's no way his family would have accepted me if they knew about my dark and sinful past, I guess. This wasn't the case for husband and I's friends, who were aware of the real story. Best friend was in on this too. Usually, they're all very tight-lipped around the family, but mother-in-law happened to run into my best friend when drunk. Apparently, my best friend had accidentally slipped and told my mother-in-law that she was happy about our relationship even though I was a stripper when we met. I'm sure she had the right spirit while saying that, but unfortunately it didn't do any favors for my already uneven relationship with mother-in-law. Mother-in-law demanded an explanation immediately. I didn't know what to tell her, and husband wasn't anywhere nearby. Mother-in-law is getting redder and angrier, spitting accusations at me for lying to her. I'm cornered on all ends because now sister-in-law has heard the yelling from the kitchen and is interested. I know I could just as easily have refused to utter a word, but I was honestly scared of mother-in-law's already rising temper. I really thought she was going to drag me to the living room by my hair and scream at me in front of everyone. So I told her, mistake number 4. I should have kept my mouth shut. By the end of my story, mother-in-law is shaking with rage. She yells at me, for 1, lying to her about how husband and I met. 2, being a loose woman who seduces all men. 3, trapping her son into marriage with me using dirty tricks. 4, luring her son into a relationship for his money. 5, tainting her precious household with my cheap ways. 6, being the reason I ruined husband's relationship with his ex-wife. She's under the impression that husband and his ex-wife were great together and would have gotten back together at some point. Anyway, at this point, she's in hysterics. She's attracted everyone's attention with her screeching. I try to console her and tell her that it's all in the past and I don't do that stuff anymore. But nothing works. She basically tells me she won't stand for this marriage, that she always knew there was something off about me, and that she won't tolerate someone like me in her family. She calls me an embarrassment. Then she storms around and asks me to return a really expensive Chanel bag that she had bought for me last Christmas. And I tell her I don't have it anymore because I lost it a while back. For some reason, that sets her off even more. She says she's going to take something of mine as payback for it and start scouring the house. She sets her eyes on my laptop lying on the table, and now I'm begging her to stop. But she shakes me off and basically smashes my laptop against a wall because that bitch has been stealing all our money. Someone must have alerted my husband, who was upstairs with his friends, as he comes running down and tries to stop his mother. He tells her she's being crazy and causing a scene, but instead she declares that husband and I are going to get a divorce as she doesn't want a skank in the family. She's also dead set on taking away my son because she doesn't want her grandson growing up with me for a mother. And okay, this is when I can't take it anymore. She's talking about taking away my son. So I'm furious too, and I yell some pretty bad things about what a pain she's been since husband and I got married. In hindsight, I should have kept my cool, as this only riles mother-in-law up more. But I was really just trying to stand my ground. Husband pulls me back and tells me to calm down. Husband and a couple of other relatives manage to calm mother-in-law down, and husband's uncle offers to take her home, but not before giving me an irritated look. For now, mother-in-law and I are not talking, though mother-in-law has been contacting husband every week to ask him when we're going to get separated. Husband is mad at me and says it's my fault for inviting a friend who couldn't handle her liquor, and he's even madder that I lashed back at mother-in-law. He's fully defensive of his mother and wants me to understand where she's coming from, as he's from a pretty uptight and strict family. Husband thinks it's a good idea for me to go stay with a friend for a while as he sorts things out. He thinks he made the right call by not telling mother-in-law about us, which best friend doesn't agree with. Best friend did apologize a lot for what she caused, but I'm not feeling very gracious towards her at the moment. So, am I the a-hole? Wow, original poster's story reads like a soap opera. Jokes aside, I think original poster is not the a-hole. It's clearly your mother-in-law who acted in a ridiculous manner and publicly humiliated you. Do I think it would have helped if you and husband had told her the truth way before? Yes, perhaps by now you would have reached an understanding. Do I also think she could have had a cooler reaction? Also yes. I know that the older generation aren't all so open-minded, but I've seen many families make do even if they don't agree fully with another's way of life. Husband is an idiot for siding with his mother despite being the one to marry you in the first place. I mean, what did he expect? It's his mom. He should have been fully prepared for the truth to come out someday or the other. How does he expect you to shoulder all the responsibility for the way you met? Husband should be trying to get his mother to be more understanding. I know your friend was drunk, but I low-key feel like it was her fault too. She knew she was holding on to a pretty big secret of yours while coming into this party with 100% chance of running into your mother-in-law. She should have been careful. At the same time, original poster and husband are also idiots for thinking no one would spill the beans at some point. I think it's best for now to let mother-in-law cool off. Hopefully, she said a lot of things in the heat of the moment, and you both will be able to work it out over a gentler conversation later. Wife says she feels hurt by the way I talk to her in front of our children, but I don't see what I'm doing wrong. Okay, so wife 48 female and I 50 male have been married for about 20 years and we have 3 children, 20 female, 18 male and 14 female. We're a pretty close-knit family, so it's the usual for us to spend a lot of time bickering and joking around. Of course, this is reduced over the years as kids have gotten older, what with the eldest one going off to college. Wife and I have had a stable marriage as well. We've had bad fights before, but nothing we haven't recovered from. That's why this incident seems silly as hell to me. But my wife says I've been insulting her feelings lately, and I don't understand why or how. My mom and dad growing up were always very light-hearted and snarky towards each other. Bantering and throwing around the occasional mean remark were very common and considered to be funny more than anything. I inherited that quality too and can be quite sarcastic without even realizing it. Mostly it's funny, but I guess sometimes you can cross over a line and come off insensitive. My wife thinks I've crossed that line. When we hang around with our children, I'll usually make conversation at the table by poking fun at my daughters and sometimes my wife. Wife says that she doesn't like the way I make fun of her in front of the kids anymore, especially concerning her looks. She thinks that I'm mean and I'm trying to paint her in a negative light in front of the kids who are just as comfortable joking around with us. I didn't take wife's disapproval too seriously, as I thought she must have just been in a bad mood that day. But it happened again. As she's gotten older, my wife has changed a lot, appearance-wise. Sure, she doesn't have the same perfect figure or a jawline anymore, but it doesn't mean I love her any less. I've managed to retain some thinness thanks to my genes, but physical looks don't really matter anymore. We've been together for close to 20 years. The other day, my wife was very upset because I had jokingly called her an elephant, in my language, in front of the youngest, who she has taken to calling her mother the same nickname from then on too. Wife says she feels humiliated and disrespected and blames me for everything. I don't really get why she's angry about this. I don't think it's a big deal. Wife and I have always enjoyed taking digs at each other throughout our relationship. I don't understand what changed. I've teased my parents with colorful nicknames growing up and won't be offended if my kids pick up the habit. In my opinion, it's the fun part of spending time with your family without actually hurting their feelings. I've tried to tell my wife that nobody means to actually insult her and that we all adore her, but she's still sad about it and I don't know how to deal with it. You're the a-hole. You seem genuinely clueless about the fact that your jokes are being perceived as reality on her part. You can't always control how people take your words. Even if your wife was on board with your teasing before, consider that something might have changed. Ask her if she's alright. How is she doing emotionally and mentally? Maybe she's going through something and it's causing her to take your quips more seriously than intended. They're right. Your wife also seems to be around an age where lots of women go through a lot of hormonal and physical changes thanks to menopause. She may be dealing with feelings of insecurities and depression. I advise original poster to apologize and take his words back and give her some reassurance. Even if original poster thinks insults and jokes are cool, it does not mean the other person is comfortable with it. I think you're the a-hole not because you're sarcastic, but because you continued to call your wife a name even after she told you that she wasn't okay with it. You should have backed off immediately upon noticing that your wife was obviously upset about the kind of impression this was making on your kids. As a mother myself, I think there are many things at play here. As another user pointed out, she might be going through a rough patch. Original poster isn't doing her any favors by taking a hit at her self-image, even if it was done as a joke. Secondly, insulting your wife in front of your kids only lets them know that they can do it too. This type of behavior has consequences and your kids may stop viewing her as an authority figure to be respected. This can especially be harmful in mother-daughter relationships which are fragile as they come during daughter's teenage years. We hope you enjoyed today's stories. Use the comment section below to state your verdict on the situation, express your opinion, and share some valuable advice.